Our mental health is quietly being shaped by the daily micro-habits we tolerate, from scrolling on our phones for 30 minutes before bed to absorbing the secondhand stress of a highly dramatic coworker. If you examine the recent data published in the Computers and Human Behavior Reports in August 2024, doom scrolling is not merely a modern annoyance, it actively provokes high levels of existential anxiety. We frequently treat joy and mental peace as luxury items rather than biological necessities. Julian, we are looking at how small, deliberate lifestyle changes, like setting strict social boundaries, increasing nature exposure, and practicing digital mindfulness, can profoundly reshape our mental health.
The connection between small daily inputs and our overall mental state is frequently underestimated by the general public. People assume that finding peace requires a massive life overhaul, such as quitting a demanding job or moving to a completely new city. The clinical research points in the opposite direction. Small behavioral shifts compound over time to create a protective barrier against chronic stress. The 2024 study you mentioned surveyed 800 adults and found a direct link between negative media consumption and a deep, pervasive sense of dread. Dr. Aditya Arakar from Harvard has described this phenomenon as popcorn brain, where constant online overstimulation makes it difficult to engage with the slower, quieter pace of offline life. Your brain becomes conditioned to expect a high rate of novel, alarming information.
The term popcorn brain captures the fragmented attention span most adults experience daily. The tension I see here is that these devices and platforms are heavily engineered to exploit our evolutionary biases. We are biologically wired to pay attention to threats. When a user opens an app, the algorithm serves them negative news because it guarantees a physiological reaction and consequently longer engagement. Telling someone to simply stop scrolling feels akin to telling them to ignore a blaring fire alarm.
That evolutionary mismatch is the core issue driving much of our modern anxiety. Our brains evolved to monitor local threats, a predator in the bushes, a territorial conflict in our small tribe, a lack of resources in our immediate environment. We are now processing global tragedies and societal conflicts in real time, 24 hours a day. The human nervous system was not designed to carry that volume of distress. This is why replacing the behavior, rather than just trying to suppress it through sheer willpower, is crucial for success. If someone challenges themselves to swap 30 minutes of screen time for an analog activity like reading a physical book, cooking a meal from scratch, or tending to a garden, they are giving their amygdala a chance to power down. They are essentially telling their nervous system that the immediate environment is safe.
Let us shift from the digital environment to the physical one. We frequently discuss removing the negative stimulus, but adding a positive physiological stimulus is equally vital for recovery. A common piece of advice is to simply get outside, which often sounds like an empty platitude offered by people who do not understand severe stress. I want to look at the clinical efficacy of time spent in nature and why it works so rapidly.
It goes far beyond a platitude. It is a measurable biological intervention. Researchers at the University of Michigan conducted a comprehensive study led by Dr. Mary Carol Hunter to determine the effective dose of nature needed to reliably reduce stress. They had participants take nature pills over an 8-week period. The data showed that spending just 20 to 30 minutes sitting or walking in an environment that felt connected to nature produced the most significant drop in cortisol levels. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone. A 20-minute dose is enough to shift the body out of a sympathetic state, the fight or flight response, and into a parasympathetic, restorative state where healing and digestion occur.
The specificity of that 20 to 30-minute window is fascinating. It implies that relief does not require a weekend hiking trip in a remote national park or an expensive wellness retreat. A person can step away from their desk, walk through a local urban park, and fundamentally alter their endocrine system. I suspect many working adults view taking a 20-minute break as unproductive or wasteful. Yet the physiological data suggests that failing to take that break degrades long-term cognitive function and emotional regulation.
Productivity demands often override our biological needs. We see this not just in how we handle our time and physical space, but in how we manage our relationships. Your social circle is an environment just like a forest or a digital feed. People often overlook how deeply the attitudes, complaints, and stress levels of those around them influence their own minds. Human beings are highly porous to the emotional states of their peers.
This brings us to the concept of social contagion. We understand that respiratory viruses are contagious. We are much less accustomed to treating emotions and stress as transmissible phenomena. If a person spends their day around individuals who thrive on gossip, chronic complaints, and constant interpersonal conflict, they will likely absorb that agitation without realizing.
The scientific literature on the social contagion of stress is remarkably robust. Observing someone else experiencing stress can trigger a parallel physiological stress response in the observer. Studies measuring heart rate and corticosterone levels in animal models, as well as human observational studies, show that individuals in close proximity to a stressed counterpart will experience similar biological spikes. If your coworker is constantly complaining or manufacturing drama over minor inconveniences, your body is registering their distress and preparing for danger. Your nervous system reacts as if the threat is happening directly to you.
How does a person navigate this reality when they cannot easily remove themselves from the toxic environment? You cannot always quit your job or cut off a difficult family member. The mandate to protect your peace frequently clashes with the practical obligations of daily life and social cohesion.
The strategy relies heavily on internal boundary setting and maintaining emotional distance. Not every argument deserves your attention, and maintaining your internal peace is frequently more valuable than proving you are right. If a colleague attempts to pull you into a negative spiral or an unproductive gossip session, you can choose to politely disengage rather than matching their elevated energy. It requires dedicated practice to stop absorbing external chaos. You have to identify the people who chronically drain your energy and consciously limit your emotional investment in those interactions. You learn to observe their chaos without participating in it.
That requires a high degree of self-awareness. It also requires dismantling the guilt that is heavily associated with saying no to people. Many adults feel obligated to be a perpetual sounding board for everyone else's problems. Choosing to protect your own mental energy is often mischaracterized by others and sometimes by ourselves as selfishness or a lack of empathy.
Setting boundaries is a necessary act of self-preservation. When you reduce the daily noise from dramatic individuals, you create the mental space needed to focus on purpose, health, and genuine connection. A life built around peace is naturally less dramatic. Sometimes adults confuse a peaceful life with a boring life because their nervous systems have become so habituated to a high-stress baseline. They mistake the adrenaline of conflict for excitement.
Habituation to stress is a dangerous psychological trap. It numbs a person to the small, subtle joys that make life sustainable over the long term. This highlights the importance of intentional joy, and what some psychologists refer to as a happiness list. The practice involves writing down 20 simple, highly accessible activities that generate joy. Listening to a specific album from your youth, walking a dog, drinking a quiet cup of coffee, or watching a sunset. These activities seem trivial when viewed in isolation.
They seem trivial until you realize that many adults have entirely forgotten how to have fun. Fun is frequently treated as a luxury reserved for a 2-week vacation once a year. A healthy, resilient life integrates joy into the daily routine. Intentionally scheduling time for a hobby, whether that is photography, fishing, or playing board games with friends, trains the mind to anticipate something positive. This active anticipation disrupts the passive cycle of chronic worry. You are giving your brain a different target to focus on.
I want to examine the role of gratitude in this cognitive framework. Gratitude is another concept that suffers from severe overuse in popular culture. It is frequently commodified into greeting card slogans or toxic positivity. The clinical application of gratitude involves actively training the brain to notice positive occurrences, which directly counteracts our innate negativity bias.
The negativity bias is the brain's deeply ingrained tendency to register and remember negative stimuli much more readily than positive ones. Writing down 3 good things that happened each day is a well-documented, highly effective psychological intervention. It forces the brain to actively scan the environment for successes, moments of beauty, and instances of connection, rather than just passively cataloging failures and perceived threats. Over time, this daily practice physically alters neural pathways, making it significantly easier to access positive emotions when faced with adversity.
We haven't touched on the physiological mechanism of laughter, which fits perfectly into this framework of accessible interventions. The science of laughter shows it is a potent stress reliever. Yet, as people age, the frequency of their laughter tends to plummet.
Laughter is one of the fastest ways to regulate the nervous system. When you laugh, you take in oxygen-rich air, which stimulates your heart, lungs, and muscles. It increases the endorphins released by your brain. More importantly, a robust laugh fires up and then cools down your stress response, leading to a decreased heart rate and lower blood pressure. Finding humor in daily life, watching funny movies, or just spending time with friends who do not take themselves too seriously acts as a powerful buffer against chronic worry. It physically tension-proofs the body.
The contrast is quite sharp when you lay it out. On one hand, a person can default to an hour of doom scrolling, actively training their brain to seek out despair, outrage, and existential dread. On the other hand, they can implement a simple gratitude practice, seek out moments of laughter, and spend 20 minutes walking outside, training their brain to recognize stability, safety, and joy. Both sets of actions require roughly the same amount of time, but they yield entirely divergent physiological and psychological outcomes over a lifespan.
The choices we make in these small, seemingly insignificant moments ultimately dictate our reality. Mental health is not a static trait, it is a daily practice. If you combine 20 minutes of nature exposure, a firm boundary against unnecessary interpersonal drama, and a habit of acknowledging 3 good things, you are fundamentally restructuring your mental landscape. You are actively building a life that you do not need to constantly escape from.
It is remarkable how many of these interventions, laughter, walking in a park, ignoring petty gossip, are entirely free. The barrier to entry is not financial, it is behavioral. We have to be willing to disrupt our own comfortable miseries.
Disrupting those comfortable miseries requires a conscious decision to prioritize your own well-being over the expectations of a highly stressed society. When you stop doom scrolling, when you walk away from the dramatic coworker, and when you take 20 minutes to sit in the sun, you are signaling to your own brain that your peace matters.
The broader cultural narrative often sells us the idea that improving mental health always requires complex, expensive, or time-consuming interventions. The empirical evidence suggests that our baseline well-being relies heavily on fundamental elements: sunlight, physical movement, clear social boundaries, and deliberate attention to our digital diets. We possess the practical tools to create a resilient, joyful life if we are willing to reclaim our time and protect our focus. The challenge is viewing these small, accessible choices as powerful biological interventions. They are the mechanisms that govern our daily peace.
If this conversation brought you value, send it to a friend who might need a reminder to protect their peace today.